And then, here we go. This is the big one. I'm sure Tony was all oiled up and greased up and ready to go. Will Ostrich and Kenny Olivier. And Ostrich's entrance video was a full-length movie before he came to the ring.
Full-length movie about an assassin coming to Toronto.
Yeah, it was very, very science fiction-ish.
Very John Carpenter.
Well, as we've mentioned, and we saw when Kenny, old Twinkle Toes, was in Japan, they think they're characters in video games, and they actually dress like them, and they act like them, and there's some meaning behind Ostrich watching news video or whatever the fuck. It's very deep. It's very deep. And again, and Don Fallis was at ringside with his own security, even though he wasn't technically in anybody's corner, right? That's the way they kind of presented it. At least these two guys can move. The other Japanese guys on the show are so old and broken down or crippled or whatever because of all the stupid shit they do. These guys have just started crippling themselves with all the stupid shit they do so they can move. So it's quicker. But they did the forearms too. Just back and forth, shitty, no contact. Nobody can throw a fucking punch. Because I know Kenny's never been in a real fight except the one he got bitten in. But one would think Ostrich, being a punk from the UK, would have been in a few dust-ups. Anyway, here's the thing. Everybody raves about how, is this going to be, whether it's Kenny and Okada or Kenny and Will or this guy and that guy, it's going to be 7 stars. It's going to be a classic. It's going to be the greatest match of the year. And so when I look at these two or any match that's presented with that expectation, I say, okay, how does this compare to Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat? Because as we all know, that is still pretty much the pinnacle of athletic competition in pro wrestling, where it was believable enough to be a contest, but exciting enough to be pro wrestling. It didn't go too far. It was the porridge that was just right. Everything else is based on that. Any further, and it was fake. It was sports entertainment. Back up any, and it was fucking too dry. But in competition, in psychology, in the game of physical chess, as Gordon Soley would say, as something you could get lost in, whether it was 58 minutes in a Superdome, or whether it was the fucking half an hour in Chicago, or whatever, Nashville, whatever the fuck, you could get lost in that shit and you could buy it, and the intricacies and the little things and the basics. This is an exhibition of video game moves by highly athletic performers with absolutely no basics and no psychology, and all of their little shit looks phony. The simple shit is phony. The complicated shit, the triple flips and lindies and landing on their feet and whatever, though, they do that fine. Because that's all they practice, because that's all they worry about, because that's the superficial fucking view they have of wrestling. But when they try to throw a punch or they try to grab somebody, it's the fucking exhibition of same. So, and there was no MJF in this to keep something this fucking long interesting, to have it mean something from 1 minute to the next. It was a series of moves and cool things they thought of to do, strung together. Don Fallis interferes and gets kicked out like 5 or 10 minutes into the match. He's gone.
Which,
yeah.
I mean, again, I was like, okay, they're going to just have the rest of the match. And then Don Fallis out there for the 20 minutes at the end. So I don't even know what to think of this.
Oh, we'll get there. Twinkle Toes got his juice by his head being smashed into the desk. Those looked pretty good. Of course, he got a pap smear instead of a juice job. But then I enjoyed Ostrich wiping his crotch with the Canadian flag. That was a nice heel move. And then that set up Olivier clotheslining him and then getting the flag and wrapping it around his neck and throwing him around and hanging him. That was the best part of the match. That actually looked like a fucking wrestling match had broken out.
If that had happened, though, in the States with an American flag, how big a deal would that be?
I don't know. What's legal and illegal anymore? You can't give the Nazi salute in Germany or they'll put you in jail. Bradshaw found that out, but...
I mean, I don't even remember. There were foreign heels that were just wiping their ass with the American flag?
Well, not in the territory days because they'd all been shot. But anyway, so then Kenny ran Willie into the stairs and he got color. At least he got halfway good amount of juice. But then Kenny gives him the DDT on the stairs, and they've been out on the floor forever, and this is not even halfway over with. And there were DDTing people on stairs. And then they just did a deal where one guy would give the other guy a German suplex. The other guy would bounce up to his feet and grab that guy and give him one. And they traded back and forth a couple of times. I wrote, more moves over and over. It will not end. Countless 2 counts. At the 32-minute mark, Don Fallis came back to the ring. Referee sees him, does nothing. He's just standing there. And then Kenny does that shitty knee lift. What does he call it? The V trigger? I called it the Canterbury knee because of his little skip and prance that he does into it. So then Don is trying to pull Will out of the ring, but the referee gets out, and instead of kicking Don out again like he did before, which obviously didn't work, he just grabs him and turns his back like he's trying to pull Don away so Don can hand Ostrich a screwdriver. And then Kenny picks Ostrich up and picks him up and sets him up for the one-winged fairy. And Will draws back and stabs Kenny in the head with the fucking screwdriver. And he goes down, then Will hits an elbow and his big finish move and covers him. And Kenny gets his foot on the ropes. A rope break off being stabbed in the head with a screwdriver and then hit with 2 finishes. And then Ostrich gives Kenny a taste of his own medicine with the one-winged fairy and gets a 1 count. And then the man who had just got stabbed in the head with a fucking screwdriver and given 2 or 3 big finishes gets up, and they traded the forearms and slaps. There were 28 of them that I counted. They were going so quick because they were trying to make up for them all looking fake and phony and girlish with speed. So I might have been off on that count slightly. Then Kenny hits a brainbuster and a German suplex, gets a 2 count. Then another knee lift. Then Ostrich hits an elbow and goes for a double arm suplex and dropped Kenny right on top of his head. Not in the way that you drop somebody on their head in giving them a move, or even in the way that you, in a working way I'm talking about, or in a way that you pick them up and you botch something and you drop them on their head. He picked him up and looked like he meant to do this. He just dropped him on his fucking head and got a 2 count. And then another elbow, and then he hit his finish again, and then he covered Kenny 1, 2, 3. So not only was that match 40 minutes from bell to bell, but it was the flattest finish of the night because Ostrich just kept hitting moves on a fucking body with no build until he beat him. 1, 2, 3.
I think part of the problem was he used a Phillips head instead of a flat head.
Oh, come on. Everybody knows a flat head will go deeper.
That's what I said. He used a Phillips head instead. That's the problem.
Oh,
I'm agreeing with you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I misunderstood that.
I can't disagree about some of the ridiculous stuff. I mean, surviving after getting stabbed with a screwdriver right in the forehead, that's something. I enjoyed it because I kind of know what to expect from the big Omega matches, and I liked the first match they had, and I like Ospreay. So I liked it, but I want to say this. Because obviously you and I see a lot of these things differently, but, wrestling, when I was a kid and my dad and some of the kids who hated wrestling first started saying wrestling was fake, the whole idea was they don't really hurt each other. And then as you start getting into it, you're like, well, they really do get hurt, but the intention obviously is to work with the person and not hurt them. Now it's just like they hurt themselves.
Yes.
And they let other people hurt them. Kenny Omega, whatever you want to say about it, Kenny Omega, it looked like he almost broke his neck on that Tiger Drop. He got dropped right down on his neck and the back of his neck. He looked like he was rocked. If he wasn't, give him a pat on the back for being an actor.
Bear in mind, he always looks confused, but he looked, out of it at that point.
But that's the thing, because, Dave Meltzer, and this isn't to say anything bad about Dave, other than I disagree with this way of looking at it. He tweeted out something to paraphrase. It was like Ospreay beat Omega, 40 minutes, great match. These guys really put themselves through a lot to entertain everyone. But there's the only demand for it is because they've established that they do it.
Yes.
And doing it is going to make these guys have early retirements. I mean, Kenny Omega, I don't know how much.
Well, I'm all in favor of early retirement for him, but I don't want him to be paralyzed and in an iron lung to do it.
That Tiger Driver was as bad. I mean, that was bad. That looked like Kenny Omega. How's he going to continue this match? And he did.
It would have been great if it was a money drawing angle that you did when you attacked somebody and came back to have a match and just did that one move. That'd be fucking great. Long as it didn't break his neck, that'd be fabulous. But since it was just another meaningless move in the middle of this fucking ridiculously long video game match, you're just risking a fucking broken neck.
But it's not even just this match. Look up and down this card. There's meaningless stiffness. Like, okay, everyone knows we're going to work together right now. Stand in the middle of the ring and just hit me as hard as you can. Not pretend to, and I will make it look like it does. And it's hard when everyone's watching you and you're doing it like that in the middle of the ring. But
and it's not even that. Also, I don't mind laying a chop in if a guy's going to sell it. But when somebody is hitting you as hard as they can and you're acting like that it doesn't hurt, that's a double negative.
I mean, just the whole, I'm going to put my chest out there now, either at the beginning of the match or sometimes after they've done tons of shit in the match, kicked each other's ass. They should at least have a little bit of a personal problem with each other by this point of the match. Okay, I'm just going to stand here, hit me as hard as you can. And then I expect you to return the courtesy, and I'll do the same to you.
Oh, thank you very much.
But that's the thing, wrestling, we're all wrestling fans. And whether you like a wrestler or not, unless they're just a complete dirtbag, you don't want them to have an early death or an early career-ending injury or a lifetime of pain. Some of these guys have to start asking themselves, what exactly are we doing and why? Because I don't think too many people would be upset if Kenny Omega didn't land on his head. And there are only so many landings that you could have from what he landed on his head from.
And as a promoter, you said, hey, nobody wants him to have a career-ending injury or whatever the fuck. As a promoter, even if I don't give a fuck about him personally, I've got an investment in them, TV time. I'm paying them. They've got contracts. Not only do I not want them to be hurt so that I can't book them if they're main event guys, but also as a promoter, I don't want these fucking idiots doing all this shit that doesn't register and doesn't mean anything, because then when I do an angle that's supposed to mean something, that's supposed to draw, and some guy's supposed to be hospitalized or injured or hurt, what the fuck is left to do to him? So it's stupid for business. It's just indulgent for the fucking mark talent that thinks that, oh golly, I can do whatever I want because we're all friends here. So I'll just do every move known to man in the third match and nobody paid to see me. And I'll make it look fake when I do it. And then the main event can go out there and fucking play tiddlywinks.
I'll make it look fake, but I'm really going to hurt the shit out of myself.
Yeah. We're all going to beat each other up, but everybody's going to be able to see through it a mile away.
So that's my biggest issue with it. Again, I liked it for what it was. I knew what to expect, but they went 40 minutes of just kicking the shit out of each other in a work match, and there's no way these guys weren't banged up coming out of it. And At a certain point, you have to ask yourself, what business are you in? It's professional wrestling. The whole idea is for you not to be banged up like that after the match. But that's my final thoughts.